Hello everybody, my name is Sonia Souza and I come from Italian University. I'm going to talk about how to evaluate learning in Tele environments. So, this presentation will cover three main parts. The first part addresses evaluation associated terms and discusses on why to evaluate. The second part focuses on the course perspective and on providing evidence of student learning. This is by proposing an evaluation strategy. That evaluation strategy includes an assessment plan of action and reflection on assessment results and its communication. The final and last part addresses some assessment useful techniques and tools and also discusses on how to know if your evaluation strategy will work or not. Main associated terms includes evaluation, education assessment, and assessment. Evaluation is the making of a judgment on amount, a number, or value of something. Judgment made on the basis of students' performance. The education assessment is the process of documenting knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs. Assessment refers to activities, those undertaken by teachers and students, to provide information to use as feedback. And this feedback will enable the evaluation, the teaching, learning activities in which they are engaged. Additional associated terms are knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs. Knowledge is the familiarity with facts, information, description, or skill acquired through experience or education. Skills means that is the learned capacity to carry out predetermined results. Attitudes is a favorable or unfavorable evaluation of something. Beliefs is the psychological state in which an individual holds a proposition or premise to be true. Now, why we need to evaluate? Basically, is to assess your course program and learning outcomes and to understand if those were successful or not. Main benefits of evaluation are to help you to determine what your students are learning, to reevaluate your teaching strategies and course program, and with this evaluation you will be able to answer the questions like have you the goals and objectives of the course been met, have the learning methods work, and how much it benefits learners. This evaluation process can use a variety of information sources like portfolios, work in progress, teacher observation, written reports, and so on, and also uses some assessment techniques and tools. More. What should be evaluated and when? The evaluation process should begin as soon as the students become aware of two main things: the instruction goals and the performance criteria. It involves a goal setting in the beginning of the course. It involves monitoring process throughout the course, and it involves a reflection on results after or in the end of the course. Also can be focused on either individual, the learner, either the learning community, the group, or in the course program as a whole. So, to sum up, we have just described some associated terms and discuss why we need to evaluate. Basically, is to assess the course and learning outcomes. We then continue by focus on the course perspective. This is by defining an evaluation strategy. This evaluation strategy includes a variety of assessment strategies to provide evidence of student learning. Also includes an assessment plan of action and the reflection of assessment results and communication. Any evaluation strategy should involve everyone in the process. It should help understand what will be assessed, How will be assessed? It should include appropriate measurement instruments in terms of validity and reliability, measuring what students are expecting to achieve, indicating the consistency and precision of the test measurements. The evaluation process can be regarded within three main steps. The first step is when we plan the evaluation strategy. This regards to answering three main questions. What will students learn? How to evaluate learning? How to collect evidence of that learning? The second step is to implement the planning action. This is to assess the course programs and assess learning outcomes. Then the third and final steps is to reflect on results. This culminates in the evaluation and in providing feedback of that evaluation. So first, we need to understand what will students learn. This must be described on the course program, especially on learning outcomes or on the objectives of the course. Now that we know what students will learn, we need to know how to evaluate learning. This is by identifying the aim of the evaluation and defining the assessment criteria and indicators. In the course program, this is usually addressed as assessment methods for the course. Now that we know what students will learn and how we will evaluate their learning, we need to know how to collect evidence of that learning. This evidence is collected by some indicators that help us to define demonstration of learning actions, like compiling evidence of knowledge, observing communication actions, examining students' critical thinking and solving problem skills. We have just defined the evaluation strategy. Now we move forward to plan the assessment action. This assessment action should be done in three distinct time phases: before, during, and after instruction. The first time phases should measure students' current knowledge and skills. This is to understand students' aptitude and preparation, motivation, and learning styles in the beginning. Then we need to measure students' learning achievements and performance throughout the course. And finally, we need to get feedback to determine course general outcomes, achievements, and satisfactions. But before we move on to the assessment plan, we need to know why we need assessment. Assessment is used to inform and guide teaching and learning because it provides frequent and descriptive feedback to students. It provides also insights that can be used to modify the instruction. Assessment helps students to set learning goals. For example, it addresses specific outcomes. It ensures students of their progress and achievements. It articulates what comes next in the learning process. Also, assessment can help to assign a report grade or to motivate the students to learn. Now we move on into describing the assessment plan cycle. This is a cycle that happens or should happen every time we need to assess students' performance and achievements in a particular learning area. The first thing that needs to be addressed in here is to inform students of what activities will enable the learning process. Now that we identify the learning activities on this cycle, we need to know how students will demonstrate their learning. This can be provided by collecting descriptive or specific indicators or self-peer actions. After we collect the learning achievement indicators, those based on formative or summative assessment methods, we need to provide students some feedback. But before we move on describing the next step of this assessment plan cycle, we would like to talk about what we understand by formative and summative assessment methods. The formative assessment, for example, is mainly used to provide feedback. Usually is applied in two main ways. One, to assess an individual or a group, in this case used to collect indicators of learning achievements in specific learning areas. Or it can be used to provide feedback on learning strategies and course learning improvements. This is done by assessing the course in general terms and then reflecting in the results, which will provide information that leads to improving the curriculum and the program performance. The summative assessment, on the other hand, is used to measure if either individual or group accomplish their learning goals. Aims as well to certify competencies or lack of performance in a particular area. Also, it is used in general terms to assess the course program or strategies. In this case, it is usually used to measure the success of a curriculum, measuring the learning achievements and if the objectives defined in the curriculum were accomplished. Let's continue by describing the activities in this assessment cycle. The first thing you need to know in this cycle is to identify what activities enable students to learn. After you identify the learning activities, you go on collecting indicators that demonstrate learning. Then you need to provide ongoing feedback to students. And finally, of course, you need to inform students what will be the next step in learning. The final phase of this assessment procedure is to reflect on all indicators collected so far. Indicators that provide either qualitative descriptions, either quantitative marks, or self, peer, or teacher reflections on different learning achievements. And then we need to select from those indicators the ones that will be used to measure and certify students' competencies from those who will assessing the course in general terms. And then we need to reflect in the results, aiming to gather information that leads either to understand if learning activities enable students to learn or seeking for ways to improve the curriculum and the program performance. This is the result of an evaluation process. Let's summarize what we have described so far in this presentation. In the beginning, we addressed some terms associated with evaluation and why we need to evaluate. The second part of this presentation, we addressed the evaluation process. We described each step of this process. First, we need to define an evaluation strategy, then move on to a plan of assessment, and finally, we end this process by reflecting on students' competencies and learning achievements. So, the final part of this presentation will be addressed to provide some assessment useful techniques and tools for collecting students' demonstration of learning and by describing a possible process which leads to understand if the evaluation strategy is in fact worked. These assessment techniques and tools are usually used by teachers to assess students' performance, although we will not aim to address in here all techniques and tools available. We will just provide a sample of what we consider to be the most important one in the context. And to facilitate its description, we decide to aggregate it in groups. Those regard issues like demonstrating knowledge and understanding, thinking critically and making judgments, solving problems and developing plans, assessing and management information, communicating. Here we can see some examples of useful techniques and tools. For example, tests, essays, short answers, reports, research paper, performance tasks, presentations, portfolios, self and peer evaluation, diaries, concept maps, or case studies. Examples of demonstrating knowledge and understanding are time-specific activities, oral or written questions and examinations, interviews, questionnaires, observation checklists, performance tasks, short answers, and problem-solving exams. Thinking critically and making judgment usually used when we need to assess students' reflective actions or arguments or judgment capabilities. Examples are essays, report, journal, present a case study, book review, write an article, comment on an article, concept map. Solving problems and developing plans are usually used when we need to assess students' capability to carry out instructions or to assess their practical skills. Examples are demonstrations, simulation exercises, make a video, produce a poster, a report, or prepare an illustrated manual. Evidence compiled by the students is usually used when we need to assess students' individual and group work capabilities, like managing time, managing tasks, and organizing their work. Examples are journal, portfolio, reports, self-assessment, activities sheets, or reflection diaries. Assessing and managing information usually used when we need to assess students' capabilities to research and collect information. Examples are annotated bibliography, projects, dissertations, applied tasks, and applied problems. Communication. It assesses students' communication skills. Examples are written presentations, group work discussions, debates, role play, or presentation to a camera. Now, how do we know we are making a good evaluation? The first question is, are the objectives of that evaluation SMART? SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. By specific, we mean that the evaluation should attempt to determine different aspects of the learning process and outcomes. By measurable, we mean that we need to answer to the question: are the assessment instruments identified? Can they measure learners' performance and learning outcomes? By achievable, we mean that we need to answer to the question: is the assessment plan and strategy realistic? By relevant, we mean, does the assessment plan and strategy assesses learning, performance, and outcomes according to the course learning objectives initially described? By timely, we mean that does the assessment criteria is clearly defined so students know when the objectives will be achieved? And that's all. Thank you for listening to me. Bye.